Should shopping be banned on Sundays? Croatia has announced its intention to get rid of shopping on Sunday so retail employees can have a break. Our reporter Sophie McDevitt has been out and about on the streets of Dublin asking people if they think it would be a nice thing for shops to close on a Sunday.
No, I don't think so. I work every Sunday.
No, definitely not. I don't really go shopping, but if I wanted to, I'd like to on a Sunday.
People in retail deserve a break.
I think the shops should stay open on Sundays because there's a lot of important stuff to do. You got to prepare for Monday, you know.
I think it's up to the individual shops if they want to open or not.
No, I feel like you can get most of your good shopping done on a Sunday. Monday to Friday would be my working week, so I think Sunday's a good time to be going in and shopping.
No, I think they should close. Retail workers need a break.
I think it's fine to have them open because it's handier for like us as shoppers and also for people that work there. I think the Sunday pay most places have here is a good incentive for people to want to work, and it's frustrating if you need something just randomly on a Sunday and something's closed.
Sophie McDevitt, our reporter, speaking to people on the streets of Dublin. John McGuirk has been writing about this for Gript and he joins me now. John, you think there's something in this, do you?
I do, Kieran, although apparently I'm in a minority judging by your back. But I mean, one of the things that strikes me is that over the last 20 years or so, this phrase work-life balance keeps popping up in the discourse in a way that I don't think it did necessarily in earlier decades. And one of the reasons for that is because the work-life balance in our population has shifted. We work more and more people work. The workforce is bigger. There are more two-income households and so on. And there's much less downtime for the average person in their working life. Now, when the idea of a shopping ban on working on Sunday was, of course, originally a religious idea, but it was also a popular secular idea because that was brought in a time when there were basically no regulations on working at all. You had serfs and slaves and so on. And so the idea that it was sinful to make people work on Sundays was actually quite popular. Now, I sympathise with the people in your box top who said that retail workers deserve a day off. Because at the moment, Sunday is in Irish law, which is relatively unique internationally. Well, not unique, but rare internationally by the standards of other European countries. It's basically treated like any other day of the week. Now, I don't believe that having a day when shops close and people get to stay at home with their families would wreck the Irish economy. I don't believe that for a moment. But I do believe it might make a significant contribution to giving people more time with their families, having less pressure to be working all the time, and improve people's social lives. And the idea of a nationally agreed one day a week when people just relax and take it easy without the pressure even to go out and do the shopping for Monday, for example, I think there's something in it. And I don't think every idea from years past that we throw out is necessarily thrown out wisely.
It is a strange one, isn't it, John, how quickly that culture shifted in Ireland? Because there are other parts of Europe, and it's not true for the whole continent, but there are other parts of Europe where, major urban conurbations are fairly dead on a Sunday. And it's not because there's any laws that mandate shops not to open, but just culturally, that kind of day of rest or the idea of a day off still exists. Given that it was legally enshrined here for so long, we kind of threw off that culture fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, I think probably in Ireland, I can't remember the exact year it was changed, but I think as part of a broader and perfectly understandable trend of secularization, where this was seen, much like closing pubs on Good Friday, as a sort of a church-imposed rule, and that therefore it was a secular thing to do was to get rid of it. And I understand that impulse. Who wouldn't understand that impulse, given what we've been through in this country? But at the same time, I do think we perhaps lost sight of the genuine benefits of it in that debate. Because I think, this is one of those things, it's one of those rules that sort of disproportionately benefits, again, the upper tiers of society. Because if you're a professional person, if you're well paid, you have a 9-to-5 job Monday to Friday, you don't work at weekends. You're used to having them off. The people who work at weekends tend to be people who are struggling more, be they students, be they people on lower incomes and so on. And they tend to be the ones who suffer more from it. Just like when it was originally brought in medieval times, the main benefit of it wasn't to the lord in the castle, it was to the serf in the field. And I think we have sort of created this culture that puts more stresses on families and more stresses on the lower paid in the name of freedom. That's my view of it. I don't anticipate that it'll be changed anytime soon, because I expect the people in your box pop probably represent the majority view still. But I do think it's something that's worth thinking about and maybe having a discussion about whether there is an opportunity in the country to maybe improve the work-life balance by bringing back a nationally agreed day of rest.
Richard Guiney is with us as well. Let me introduce him. He's the CEO of Dublin Town. Richard, is there something to John's argument?
Not really. Like if you look at basically the patterns of how people use Dublin City, and this would be even more evident in the out-of-town shopping centres, Sundays is generally the third most popular day. And the idea that, it's preventing, everybody has to work on a Sunday and it's draconian. We do have the working time directive. It does obviously limit the number of hours that people work, but also, from my own family, 3 of my kids in college have or are working in retail. I'm pretty happy to get the hours when college isn't open. So, I definitely think they would be rather upset if it disappeared. But actually, if you take it, the youth patterns, and particularly on a Sunday, dining is the most popular thing, and it's done by families. So, to follow the logic through, you'd be closing the restaurants as well on a Sunday for the same reasons. But actually, that's a time when families do spend time together. And again, it's a particularly busy day for family shopping in the out-of-town shopping centres. But also, I'd also have to take issue with, things were lovely in the past. I grew up in the 80s. I left school in the 80s, and the question of where you're going was what country. And my sister emigrated, and it was a cause of enormous distress to my mother every time she dropped her off at the airport. And I was going to go myself to the UK to find work, basically after Christmas if I hadn't got a job. And luckily I got one in December, so I stayed. But otherwise I would have gone.
And
it wasn't a beautiful place.
And it's your contention that the opening up of the economy on a Sunday was part of that success story post 1980s, was it?
Yeah, no, I think it's all part of a changing culture and landscape, and we're not monocultural anymore, and I think that's a very positive thing in Ireland. And I think we have to look at people from perhaps a non-Christian background. For example, why would it be that you wouldn't open on a Friday or a Sunday or a Saturday, indeed? But look, I think it's clearly a day when people do venture out. They do venture out in families. They dine. More people dine in Dublin, for example, than shop. And I also would take issue with the assertion that the economy won't collapse. Retail is under enormous pressure. It has been for quite some time. We've lost Debenhams, we've lost the Oasis, Topshop, Topman. A lot of those retailers have ceased to exist. Other retailers are experiencing trying times. That there is change in pattern. Rents are not going to be adjusted. So 7-day trading is probably required to keep a lot of retailers active. Yeah. So it's a far more complex thing than everything. If you go back to where we were, things will be wonderful. I don't think people certainly Vox Pop show that. Don't want to do that.
John, can I go back to you? I mean, should we not apply the logic of the free marketeers out there, and you could launch a campaign to encourage people just not to go into the shops on a Sunday?
Well, the free marketeer would say open them 24 hours a day, right? But I mean, I just want to come back on something that Richard said there, which was about the emigration argument and the economic argument. I think most people who left Ireland in the 1980s went to the United States, Australia, the UK, all countries which have Sunday trading restrictions, and maintain them in large parts of those countries. In fact, in the US, it's almost unheard of for shops to be open and operating as normal on a Sunday. So I don't necessarily buy that this was somehow key to our economic revival. His point about
that wasn't the point. That wasn't the point I was making, John. What I was saying is that the landscape has fundamentally changed, and things weren't wonderful way back when. Things were actually very difficult for people.
Well, you see, this is where we just have a disagreement, because I think in those there's no denying things that the overall standard of living has increased, but the work-life balance has not improved. You now have far more two-income families than one-income families. People are spending far less time with their kids. There is much more sort of social alienation, family breakdown than there was, and I think it is worth, if we want to address that, which I think we should, I think it's worth having a conversation in society about our working habits, and this is just one small part of that I think is an interesting conversation to have. Anyway, I don't see it changing anytime soon. But I think what Croatia is doing is interesting, and the reason they're doing it are the reasons that I have outlined, in that they see a real difficulty with the constant pressure on families from the social and cultural environment that we have created in pursuit of economic policy.
Well, as with most things, I am a hypocrite, because I love the idea of giving us back our Sundays, but then I give out no end about banks not opening at the weekends and expecting us to take time off work during the week to get into them. So I'm not quite sure where I stand on it.